you're not powerless. No matter the storm, you can learn to be still. When everything around you spins out of control, the greatest strength is found within. Modern life pulls us in 1,000 directions at once. Emails, deadlines, arguments, fears. Each day feels like a quiet battle against forces we can't quite name. And yet, there is something ancient, something quietly powerful, that teaches us we don't need to be at the mercy of these forces. We can meet chaos with calm, noise with clarity, and pressure with principle. That something is Stoicism, not as a distant historical curiosity, but as a living guide for navigating uncertainty. The Stoics didn't promise a life free from hardship. In fact, they assumed hardship as a given, but they also believed in something greater, that by mastering our inner world, our thoughts, our perceptions, our judgments, we could remain anchored no matter what tides rise against us. Imagine this. Amidst a turbulent world, you're able to remain composed, not because you ignore reality, but because you've trained yourself to respond rather than react, to choose clarity over confusion and virtue over impulse. That's the heart of Stoic philosophy, not detachment, but discipline, not coldness, but clarity. It's about building a foundation so solid within that no external storm can topple it. Today we'll explore 10 Stoic principles, each one a compass point guiding you back to your inner equilibrium. These are not abstract ideals, but practical lived wisdom. Tools you can use when you're anxious, overwhelmed, or simply feeling lost in the noise of life. Whether you're facing a difficult decision, recovering from disappointment, or searching for meaning, this philosophy invites you to return to what you can control, let go of what you can't, and live with purpose. This isn't about escaping life. It's about entering it more fully, with intention, courage, and composure. The Stoics didn't shy away from life's challenges. They stepped into them, fortified by the strength of their own minds. And so can you. Before we begin, I'd be grateful if you gave this video a like. It's a small gesture, but it helps spread this philosophy to others who might need it. If you don't want to miss any videos, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. And above all, stay until the end. Each principle builds upon the last, and by the final one, you'll have a map for cultivating calm, clarity, and quiet strength in a world that rarely offers it. Principle 1. Firm purpose. To drift without direction is to hand your soul over to the winds. Imagine this, a boat in the middle of the sea. The horizon stretches endlessly in all directions. There's no land in sight. The winds shift without warning, the waves come and go, and the boat moves, but it doesn't know where. It is alive, it is moving, but it is lost. That's what life becomes when we lack direction. We wake up and we move, from task to task, from problem to problem, but somewhere deep inside we feel the hollowness of motion without meaning. Something is missing, but we can't quite name it. We are busy, but not anchored. We are moving, but not arriving. The Stoics believed this was one of the most dangerous states a person could be in, not the presence of suffering, but the absence of purpose. Epictetus said, "Difficulties show a person's character." But character is not revealed in comfort. It's forged in hardship and guided by direction. Without that guiding force, every challenge becomes a threat. With it, every challenge becomes a step forward. A firm purpose is not the same as ambition. It is not merely wanting to succeed or to be seen. Purpose is not about applause. It is about alignment between what you believe, what you value, and how you choose to live. It is the silent compass within you, pointing not to what is easy, but to what is true. Purpose doesn't appear in a flash of light. It is shaped through a process, through the silent moments when you feel disconnected from the world and are forced to ask, what truly matters to me? What am I willing to struggle for, even when no one is watching? Often, we confuse productivity with purpose, but being constantly active is not the same as being truly directed. A day full of tasks can still feel empty if none of them bring us closer to something meaningful. The Stoics remind us to stop, to ask, to reflect. Because without purpose, life isn't just uncertain, it's vulnerable to anything that blows our way. Let's make this real. Think about your life right now. What guides your decisions? Is it fear? Is it comparison? Is it the need to please others or avoid judgment? Or is there something more constant underneath? A value, a principle, a quiet reason you keep going? Maybe you've already caught glimpses of it. In the way you defend someone when it costs you something. In the way you show up even when no one thanks you. In the way you choose honesty even when it's uncomfortable. These moments are not random, they are clues. They point toward the purpose you may have been carrying all along. Here's a practical step. Set aside time, even just once this week, to sit in silence. No phone, no noise, just you and a question. What kind of person do I want to become, and what am I doing today to become that person? Write your answer down. Be specific, let it be imperfect, but honest. And then choose one action, one small act, that brings you closer to that purpose. Purpose is not a grand declaration. It's built in the quiet discipline of showing up for what matters. When we cultivate firm purpose, the world does not become easier, but it becomes clearer. You will still face storms. You will still be knocked off course. But the difference is this: you will know how to return. Purpose becomes your anchor, your lighthouse, your silent agreement with yourself that no matter how dark the night, you will keep going. This is the strength Stoicism offers, not an escape from pain, but the courage to live through it with your eyes open and your heart steady. Seneca wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." So choose your port. Choose it not for how easy the journey will be, but for how deeply it aligns with who you are. Then set your sails and begin, because life with purpose may still be hard, but it will never be hollow. Principle 2. Guarding your mind. Not everything that enters your mind deserves a place in your soul. Picture your mind as a house. Not just any house, your sanctuary. The one place where you make sense of the world, where you decide who you are, what matters to you, and how you choose to live. Now imagine leaving the front door wide open, day and night, letting strangers walk in uninvited, letting noise fill every room, letting every comment, every opinion, every fear find a seat at your table. You wouldn't do that with your home. Why do we do it with our mind? In Stoic philosophy, the mind is sacred, not because it's perfect, but because it is the only place we truly own. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The way we choose to interpret things is what shapes our emotional world, and this choice, this power, rests entirely within us. That's why guarding your mind is not just important, it's essential, because everything you allow in shapes everything that comes out. Think about how easily our peace is disrupted. A harsh comment, a bad headline, a comparison that sneaks in when scrolling. Suddenly, your entire mood shifts, not because the world changed, but because your mind let it in. Guarding your mind begins with awareness. It's not about shutting out the world or pretending nothing affects you. It's about deciding what gets to affect you, and how. Let's go back to the image of the house. If you lived near a stormy coastline, you'd reinforce the windows. You'd check the locks. You'd be careful about what you let inside. In the same way, when we know life is full of pressure and unpredictability, we must learn to reinforce the gates of the mind, not with defensiveness, but with discernment. One powerful way to do this is to practice mental fasting. Marcus Aurelius would write to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He reminded himself daily that it is not his circumstances, but his inner world that determines his peace. So try this. For 1 hour a day, fast from unnecessary input. No social media, no news, no distractions, just space. Let your mind breathe. Let your thoughts rise without being drowned in noise. This simple practice reveals just how much we consume without question, and how deeply it affects us. But guarding your mind also means building habits that strengthen it. Set small daily intentions. Read something that challenges and nourishes you. Reflect on how you responded to situations. Were you reactive, calm? Why? The Stoics did not advocate suppression of emotion. They advocated understanding, to see the impulse rise and choose not to obey it, to feel the offense and respond with wisdom instead of woundedness. When someone insults you, your ego might flare up, but you can pause and ask, "Is this true? Does it matter? Do I want to give this the power to disturb my peace?" That pause, that single moment of reflection, is the difference between being ruled by your mind and being the ruler of it. Guarding your mind also means choosing your company, not just the people around you, but the ideas you dwell in. Are you surrounding yourself with wisdom or with noise? With virtue or vanity? With what lifts you or what drains you? You are the gatekeeper of your attention, and attention is the currency of your inner life. Seneca said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." This doesn't just apply to friendships. It applies to books, to conversations, to what we consume and reflect on. You become what you consistently allow into your mind. So build your mental space like a sanctuary. Clean it regularly. Be selective with what enters. Fill it with truth, clarity, and silence. Because in a world that profits from your distraction, guarding your mind is a revolutionary act of self-respect. And when you do, when you truly begin to filter what comes in and how you respond, you'll notice something shift. You'll find more stillness, less noise, more clarity, less confusion. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Principle 3. Handling criticism. No insult is heavier than the weight you choose to give it. Let me ask you something. When was the last time a single comment stayed with you longer than it should have? Maybe it was a passing remark, a harsh tone, a look of disapproval, and suddenly you're replaying it over and over again, letting it shape the way you see yourself. Why do we give so much power to the voices of others? The Stoics taught that criticism is inevitable, but suffering from it is optional. Epictetus reminded his students, if someone speaks ill of you, live in such a way that no one will believe it. The point is not to avoid criticism. That's impossible. The point is to become the kind of person who is no longer controlled by it. Imagine a tree standing firm in a storm. Branches sway, leaves scatter, but the roots remain, solid, anchored. That is the image of a person who has built their identity not on validation, but on values. When criticism comes, and it will, we have two choices. We can internalize it blindly, or we can examine it thoughtfully. The Stoics encourage the second. Not all criticism is wrong, but not all of it is right either. The key is to separate the sting from the substance. Here's a simple method. When you receive criticism, pause. Don't respond right away. Ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it coming from someone who truly knows me? Is there something here I can use to grow? This brief moment of reflection protects you from acting out of pride or pain, and instead helps you respond from clarity. Because sometimes criticism reveals a blind spot, but often it reveals more about the critic than about you, their mood, their insecurities, their limited perspective. And if we absorb everything unfiltered, we begin to distort our self-worth through the lens of others' unrest. Marcus Aurelius said, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. You are the subject, and few people truly know your full story, your values, your effort, your growth." That's why the Stoics placed such importance on self-awareness. When you know yourself deeply, when you act in alignment with your principles, criticism loses its ability to define you. It may still sting, but it no longer steers your course. Think of the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own heart. They listen, but they are not swayed. They reflect, but they are not shaken. They stand firm because they've done the inner work to trust their path. This is not arrogance, it's integrity, and it's built not by blocking out feedback, but by filtering it through wisdom. So here's something practical. Write down your core values. Keep them visible. Return to them often. When criticism arrives, and it will, measure it against those values. Does it help you live them more fully, or does it pull you away? Over time, you'll find that your peace no longer depends on praise, and your confidence no longer crumbles under criticism, because you're no longer trying to be everything to everyone. You're trying to be true to yourself and to what matters most. And that is the only approval worth chasing. Principle 4. Transforming offense. An offense is not a scar on your spirit, but a chance to reshape your inner landscape. Imagine walking through a serene forest. The sunlight filters through the trees, casting intricate patterns on the soft earth. Suddenly, you encounter a thorny bush that scratches your arm. At first, you feel a sharp sting, a moment of discomfort that threatens to disturb your peaceful journey. Yet, what if that prick is not an attack, but a reminder to tread more mindfully? This is the essence of transforming offense. In life, hurtful words and actions can feel like those thorns, unexpected, jarring, and painful. We might recoil from the injury, letting anger or bitterness take root. Yet the Stoics teach us a different approach. They remind us that an offense is not inherent in the action itself, but in our perception of it. It is our judgment that turns a transient moment into lasting pain. Epictetus asserted that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our interpretations of them. When someone offends you, it is not their words that wound you, but the meaning you assign to those words. In other words, you have the power to reinterpret the situation. What if every hurtful remark is seen not as a personal attack, but as a mirror, reflecting the insecurities and struggles of the speaker? What if, instead of reacting in anger, you choose to see the offense as an invitation to practice empathy and fortitude? Consider this practical approach. When you feel hurt, pause and breathe deeply. Visualize the offending comment or action drifting away like leaves on a gentle stream. Ask yourself, what lesson, if any, lies beneath this moment? Is there a truth I can learn, or is it simply noise meant to provoke? By transforming the way you view an offense, you reclaim your inner space and refuse to let external negativity decide your mood. Transforming offense does not mean ignoring your feelings or pretending that nothing affects you. It means honoring your emotional response, but then choosing a higher path, one of reflection over reaction. Imagine a potter at work. Raw clay is shaped, molded, and transformed by careful hands. So too can the raw emotion caused by an offense be reshaped into something meaningful. Instead of harboring resentment, you can channel that energy into self-improvement and understanding. Think about the moments in your life when you have been wounded by criticism, harsh words, or even a careless remark. These experiences, while painful, are also opportunities. They offer a chance to evaluate your own behavior, your vulnerabilities, and ultimately, the depth of your character. When you choose to transform offense, you are not excusing the hurtful act. You are choosing to see beyond it, acknowledging that every attack is an opportunity to strengthen the inner resolve, much like tempering steel in fire to make it stronger. A useful technique is to keep a journal dedicated to these moments. Each time you feel offended, write down what happened, how you felt, and what lesson might be drawn from it. Over time, patterns may emerge that reveal how your interpretations can be shifted towards growth instead of pain. This reflective practice not only diminishes the sting of future offenses, but also cultivates a compassionate understanding of human imperfection. The Stoics often emphasized that the opinions and actions of others are beyond our control, but our reactions are firmly in our hands. By choosing to reinterpret offense through a lens of self-reflection, you fortify your heart against undue suffering. You begin to see that the true essence of strength lies not in avoiding insults, but in transforming them into stepping stones on your path to wisdom. Visualize yourself as a calm lake. When a stone, an offense, is thrown into it, ripples disturb the surface momentarily. Yet with time, the ripples subside, and the lake returns to its tranquil state. This is what transforming offense allows you to do. Absorb the disturbance, learn from it, and then let it pass, returning to a state of inner calm and equilibrium. In the end, each offense has the potential to be transformed into a lesson. With every instance where you practice this shift, you are not only guarding your peace, but actively crafting a resilient and wise inner self. It is this transformation that liberates you from the tyranny of external judgments and embeds in you a quiet, unyielding strength. Principle 5. Overcoming fear and shame. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Fear and shame. Two invisible weights we carry, sometimes for years. They shape our posture, our choices, our silence. They whisper when we stand at the edge of growth, pulling us back into safety, into smallness. But what if these emotions are not enemies to fight, but illusions to see through? The Stoics understood something deeply counterintuitive. They taught that fear and shame are not built into the events themselves, but into the meanings we assign to them. The judgment we attach, the story we tell ourselves, that is the real source of our suffering. Imagine a shadow on the wall. In the dark, it looks like a monster. You freeze, you panic, but then you turn on the light, and it's just your coat. Fear often works like that. It feeds on vagueness. It grows when left unexamined. Let's start with fear. Fear thrives in the unknown. It tells us, you'll fail, you'll be judged, you'll be hurt. But the Stoics didn't advise us to run from fear. They encouraged us to walk toward it with reason. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, ask yourself, what is so unbearable here? What can't be endured? When we break fear down into its parts, when we name it, analyze it, challenge it, we find that much of its power dissolves. For example, the fear of speaking in public. At its core, this is not fear of speech, but fear of rejection, fear of imperfection. But what if you welcomed that imperfection? What if stumbling on a word didn't define your worth, but revealed your humanity? Each time you face a fear head-on, even in small doses, your mind learns something new. That you are capable, that failure isn't fatal, that discomfort can be survived, even transformed. Now let's talk about shame. Shame is more quiet, but just as heavy. It wraps itself around our past mistakes, our hidden doubts, our perceived flaws. It convinces us we are unworthy, that we are not enough. But Stoicism rejects this lie. Epictetus taught that we are responsible not for what we've done in the past, but for who we choose to become from this moment on. Mistakes are not life sentences. They are invitations to reflect, to correct, to grow. To overcome shame, we must begin with self-honesty. What happened? Why does it still hurt? Is the guilt serving as a teacher or as a prison? There's a powerful Stoic practice here. Reflection followed by action, not self-punishment, not dwelling, but choosing to live in a way today that redeems the mistakes of yesterday. Forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, is not about forgetting. It's about choosing not to let the past hold your future hostage. You can carry the lesson without carrying the weight. Here's a practical approach. Write a letter to your past self, the one who made the mistake, who felt the fear, who carried the shame. Speak to that version of you with honesty, but also with compassion. Then, write a second letter from your future self, thanking you for not giving up, thanking you for using that pain to create something better. This exercise doesn't erase the past, but it reframes it. It reminds you that you are not frozen in your lowest moments. You are constantly evolving. The Stoics didn't promise that fear and shame would vanish, but they taught that these emotions lose their grip the moment we stop feeding them with avoidance, secrecy, and silence. When brought into the light, they shrink. And more than that, they become sources of strength. Because once you have faced your fears, once you have forgiven yourself, once you have stared shame in the eye and said, "You no longer define me," something changes. You become freer, calmer, more honest, and you begin to live not in reaction to fear or shame, but in response to purpose. That's where true power begins, not in avoiding pain, but in transforming it into clarity. Principle 6. Anticipating obstacles. The wise prepare not for what they hope will happen, but for what they know might. Most people wake up hoping the day will go smoothly. Few wake up prepared for the opposite. We move through life expecting ease, and when things go wrong, a delay, a failure, a broken plan, we fall apart. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if you could meet difficulty with composure because you saw it coming? The Stoics believed that peace doesn't come from avoiding problems, but from preparing for them. Epictetus taught his students to practice premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Not to become pessimistic, but to become unshakable. Imagine you are a traveler crossing a mountain pass. If you expect only clear skies, the first storm will terrify you. But if you've packed for cold, trained for endurance, studied the terrain, you may still feel the wind, but it won't stop you. You're ready. This is what the Stoics did, mentally and emotionally. Each morning, Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, "You will meet with interference, ingratitude, rudeness, selfishness, treachery." Not to poison his attitude, but to protect his peace. So when these things happened, he didn't take them personally. He had already made space for them in his expectations. This is not cynicism. This is preparation with grace. It is the art of building a flexible spirit, one that bends without breaking. How do you begin to anticipate obstacles? Start with the day ahead. Before stepping into it, pause and ask, what could go wrong today? Where might I be tested? What thoughts or reactions could I prepare for now, before they hijack my peace later? It could be a difficult conversation, a temptation to procrastinate, a surge of frustration in traffic. Name the moments, visualize them, then imagine how your best self would respond. Not the reactive self, the intentional one. This practice rewires your nervous system. It teaches your mind to expect life not as it should be, but as it is, and in doing so, you become less fragile. Obstacles then stop being shocks. They become invitations to apply the virtue you've been cultivating. The Stoics remind us that nothing is truly unexpected when you've already accepted that adversity is a part of life. You no longer ask, "Why me?" You ask, "How can I meet this well?" Here's a small but powerful technique. At the start of each day, write down 3 potential disruptions, things that could trigger stress, fear, or anger. Then, for each, write down a calm and wise response. Keep this list with you. Review it midday. Update it if necessary. This is not about obsessing over worst-case scenarios. It's about building mental readiness. Like a musician rehearsing before the concert, you train your mind in private so it performs with poise in public. And remember, this isn't about control. The Stoic does not expect to control the world, only their role within it. You will still stumble, but the fall won't break you because you already expected the terrain to be uneven. Think of your mind as a ship sailing toward a meaningful destination. The winds will change, the storms will come, but when you've strengthened your sails and steadied your hand, you don't panic, you adjust, you endure. That is what anticipation offers, not avoidance of hardship, but a quiet readiness to meet it. And over time, this habit becomes part of who you are. You stop fearing the unexpected because you've stopped expecting ease. And instead, you've begun expecting growth. Principle 7. Inner strength and response. It's not what happens to you that disturbs you, but how you choose to meet it. Life is not made in the moments of comfort. It's shaped, quietly and permanently, in the moments when things don't go your way. The Stoics knew this deeply. They understood that while we cannot always choose our circumstances, we can always choose our response. And in that choice lies our true power. Picture a fire burning in a quiet room. Someone opens a window, a cold wind rushes in, the flames flicker, even weaken, but they do not go out. The fire holds its ground. That's what inner strength looks like. Not invincibility, but resilience. Not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of response. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them." It sounds simple, but in that simplicity lies something radical. You can train your mind to meet difficulty with discipline instead of despair. You can choose to slow down, to pause, to not be governed by the initial wave of emotion, but to observe it, to question it, and then respond with intention. That pause, that sacred space between stimulus and response, is the birthplace of strength. Think of the last time something upset you, a betrayal, a failure, a word spoken in anger. How quickly did your mind jump to judgment, to defense, to blame? Now imagine if, in that moment, you could step outside the storm, see it from above, see your reaction forming, and choose a different one. This is the heart of Stoicism, self-rule. To be ruled by others is difficult. To be ruled by your emotions, that is unbearable. But to rule over yourself, that is the beginning of freedom. So how do you build inner strength? It starts with awareness. Pay attention to your internal climate. Where does your mind go when things don't go your way? Do you spiral into blame, shame, frustration? Or can you recognize the wave, breathe through it, and let it pass without pulling you under? The Stoics were not emotionless. They were emotionally trained. They didn't suppress their feelings. They observed them, like waves on the surface of a still sea. They let them rise, and they let them fall. A practical approach: create a daily check-in. Ask yourself, what tested me today? How did I respond? And was that response aligned with who I want to become? Over time, this practice builds a kind of emotional literacy. You begin to notice patterns, and in noticing them, you begin to gain choice. Another pillar of inner strength is forgiveness, not just of others, but of yourself. Because holding on to resentment, whether outward or inward, is like drinking poison and hoping someone else will suffer. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means releasing the grip of what you cannot change. And perhaps the most surprising part of inner strength is vulnerability. To admit fear, to acknowledge doubt, to say, "I'm struggling," without shame. That's real courage, because from that place of truth we can respond honestly, and only from honesty can we grow. The Stoics believed in a kind of strength that wasn't loud. It didn't need recognition. It didn't depend on circumstances. It was silent, consistent, anchored in values, not moods. Imagine walking through life knowing that whatever happens, insult, failure, uncertainty, you will not crumble. Not because life is easy, but because you are grounded. That kind of strength doesn't show up all at once. It's built slowly, in quiet decisions, in choosing reflection over reaction, in choosing patience over pride, and in returning to your principles again and again until they become who you are. Inner strength is not about becoming untouchable. It's about becoming deeply rooted, and when you're rooted, the world may shake, but you won't fall. Principle 8. Restraining actions. He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty. Lao Tzu. There is a moment, brief, invisible but powerful, that exists between what happens to us and what we choose to do next. In that narrow space, our life is shaped. You are cut off in traffic. Someone says something cruel. You feel the rising heat of anger, the urge to strike back. But what if you didn't? What if you allowed the emotion to rise and pass without becoming it? The Stoics placed immense value on self-restraint, not because they were cold or passive, but because they understood this truth. Reacting impulsively is easy. Responding wisely is rare. Imagine a river just after a storm. The water is wild, muddy, churning. If you try to see your reflection, it's distorted. But give it time, and the surface becomes still again. Only then can you see clearly. The human mind is the same. When emotions surge, anger, desire, fear, clarity disappears. And without clarity, we act in ways that later bring regret. Restraint is not suppression. It's not pretending you feel nothing. It's acknowledging the emotion and choosing not to be ruled by it. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom, in the Stoic view, is not doing whatever you want. It's having the power to not do what will harm you, to pause, to reflect, to act, or not, according to reason. Let's bring this into the everyday. You're in an argument, you're hurt, you want to say something sharp, something that will win, but before speaking, you stop. You ask, is this useful? Is this kind? Is this necessary? That pause, that restraint, is strength. It doesn't always feel satisfying in the moment, but it builds a life of fewer regrets and deeper respect, both for others and for yourself. Another form of restraint is in desire, the craving for instant pleasure, the distraction of indulgence, the pull to escape the discomfort of the present. The Stoics taught that discipline is not about denial, it's about liberation. To delay gratification is to remind yourself that your long-term peace is more valuable than your short-term impulses. Marcus Aurelius would write again and again to himself, "You were born for action, not indulgence." And not just any action, but right action, measured, thoughtful, aligned with purpose. A helpful practice here is evening reflection. At the end of each day, ask yourself, where did I act on impulse today? Where did I choose restraint? This self-inquiry isn't about shame, it's about self-awareness, because the more clearly you see yourself, the more power you gain to steer your life intentionally. Another aspect of restraint is in speech. Words are powerful. Once spoken, they cannot be taken back. In moments of conflict or frustration, Ask yourself, will these words build or destroy, heal or harden? Silence, in many cases, is not weakness, it's wisdom. The Stoic doesn't seek to be passive. They seek to be intentional. They act when the time is right, and not a moment sooner. They move from clarity, not compulsion. Because when you learn to restrain your impulses, you begin to trust yourself more. You become less reactive, more grounded, and slowly you discover something powerful. Not every feeling needs to become an action. Not every impulse deserves your obedience. Restraint, then, is not a limitation. It's a path to mastery. It is the space where power and peace meet. Principle 9. The power of acceptance. Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling. Seneca. There is a quiet war we all fight, not with the world, but with what is. We resist what has already happened. We argue with the unchangeable, and in that resistance, we suffer. But what if peace isn't found in changing everything, but in accepting what already is, and choosing how to meet it? Acceptance is not giving up. It's not surrendering your values or becoming passive in life. It's the wisdom to say, this is where I am. This is what is real. Now, how do I respond with strength, not denial? The Stoics believed that true power begins here, in facing reality, eyes open, heart steady, not flinching from discomfort, but stepping into it with clarity. Imagine a river. You can fight its current, exhaust yourself trying to swim upstream, or you can turn, face forward, and learn to flow with it, steering where you can, conserving your energy and using the momentum to grow. That is acceptance, not submission. Direction. The refusal to be broken by what you cannot control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Love not only the things that happen to you, but love them as if you had chosen them." A radical idea. To look at pain or loss or disappointment and say, this too has a place. This too will shape me. This does not mean celebrating misfortune. It means refusing to let it define you. You are not the event. You are the response. A practical example, you lose your job. It's sudden, painful, unfair. You have every right to feel it, to grieve it. But then comes the choice. Will you remain there, endlessly replaying it in your mind? Or will you accept it as part of your story and begin to write the next chapter? Acceptance clears the fog. It frees the energy trapped in denial and regret. And it places your focus back where it belongs, on action, on presence, on what comes next. Here's a practice you can try. When something difficult happens, write down 2 lists. On one side, what you can't control. On the other, what you can. Burn the first list if you must. Let it go. Then pour your focus into the second. That's where your power lives. The Stoics knew that much of our pain comes not from reality, but from our refusal to accept it. We say, this shouldn't have happened, but it did. We say, it's not fair. Perhaps it isn't, but here we are. And the only question that matters now is, how do I rise from here? Acceptance also means making peace with imperfection, in ourselves, in others, in the world. So much suffering comes from our insistence that things should be different than they are. But when we drop that resistance, when we let life be life, we find a strange and steady calm. Gratitude often grows in that space. When we stop wishing things were different, we begin to see what is still good, what is still beautiful, what is still possible. Acceptance is not a finish line. It's a daily practice, a mindset of realism and resilience, a gentle strength that says, this is hard, and I will meet it with grace. Because peace doesn't always come from having control. Sometimes it comes from releasing the need to. Principle 10. Living according to nature. Nature gave us reason, To ignore it is to live against ourselves. Epictetus. What does it mean to live naturally? In a world of artificial urgency, curated lives, endless distractions and silent comparison, the idea of living according to nature can seem distant, even abstract. But for the Stoics, it was not just a poetic phrase, it was a moral compass. A return to something deeply human, something already within us. To live according to nature is not to live in the forest, detached from society. It is to live in alignment with your higher faculties, your reason, your conscience, your capacity to choose virtue over impulse. It is to remember that you are not a machine, not a consumer, not a puppet pulled by every craving. You are a rational being, a social being, a part of a greater whole. Nature does not rush, yet everything is accomplished. It does not pretend. It simply is. And so should we be, honest with ourselves, connected to others, present in our actions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." What do you truly want your life to be about? Not what the world expects, not what your past says, but what your inner nature, the quiet voice beneath the noise, is calling you toward. Living according to nature means honoring cycles, understanding that seasons change, people change, you change, and resisting that change only leads to suffering. It means letting go of perfection and instead striving for harmony between your thoughts and your actions, your words and your values, your intentions and your impact on others. It is to move with integrity in a world that often rewards illusion. Practically speaking, it might look like this: choosing stillness over distraction, speaking truth, even when silence is safer, letting go of things that pull you away from your deeper self, relationships, habits, ambitions, and moving toward simplicity, toward clarity, toward meaning. It also means remembering that you are not alone. The Stoics saw each of us as a thread in a vast tapestry. To live according to nature is to recognize your connection to others, not in dependence, but in service. To help, to listen, to give. Because a life lived only for the self is a life lived out of rhythm with what we are. Nature is cooperation, contribution, balance. And when we embrace that, when we remember our place in something larger, we begin to experience peace, not as an escape from life, but as deep participation in it. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole, to be present, to live in such a way that if someone watched the silent film of your life, no words, no explanations, they would see what you stood for. That is what it means to live according to nature. So now you know the 10 principles, 10 quiet disciplines that can reshape how you move through this world, not by changing the world, but by changing your relationship to it. These ideas are not for decoration. They are tools, lenses, anchors, and if even one of them stirred something in you, then let that be the beginning of something more. If you found value in this journey, I invite you to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to the practice of thinking deeply, living intentionally, and returning often to the wisdom that already lives inside you. There's more to explore, and the next step is waiting. Continue your path by watching the next video on screen. And remember, the unshakable life is not the one without storms. It's the one with roots. Stay strong, stay thoughtful, and stay true to your nature.